Okay, welcome to the Testpiece podcast. This one's a little different. It's just me, Josh, and the guests that I have are actually just going to be clips from past episodes that we had, and just small little ones. It's going to be the question that I ask all of the climbers where I say, hey, how do you go from good to great? Before I share the actual clips of the guests saying it themselves, I want to share the themes I've pulled out along the way. I keep a note that is literally titled, What I've Learned from Talking to the Best Climbers in the World. These are the things, the themes for me that I've written down that I try to refer to remind myself how to really transcend where I'm at and reach for greatness and mastery instead of just kind of doing what we've always been told. Because to be honest, that is one of the sub-themes. It's to go from good to great, you have to break the rules. You have to do something different from what it took to go from okay to good. Going from okay to good is one thing. Going from good to great requires a different skill set. And that's an important part right there. The other things I have written are stubbornness. Gosh, just the sheer willingness for these athletes to continue to show up time and time again, regardless of indicators that perhaps they should throw in the towel. Just doing your best requires soldiering through the worst, but with confidence. And that idea of confidence is another thing I have written here where I almost want to call it overconfidence. It seems to go hand in hand with stubbornness. It seems like the best in the world know they will succeed even when others think it's obvious they won't. And I'm not sure exactly how to integrate that into our own sessions because overconfidence is something that either comes natural for people or it's just delusional and it seems like something that could lead you astray. But it's something I always have noticed in each athlete that is great is that they kind of know they're great. And so it begs the question, do they know they're great because they are great, or is knowing you're great before you're great the precondition to becoming great? Something to chew on there. Another thing that I've noticed is this deep inspiration to climb the thing that's in front of them. I kind of refer to it as being pulled rather than being pushed. There's some intrinsic motivation to really excel that seems to be deep within their hearts. And yes, when they go out on stage and the crowd is cheering, they seem to be able to gather support from that and help push them to do even better. But at the core, they are pulled into greatness rather than being pushed into greatness. And so it's something that I think about often when I'm sitting under a boulder or trying really hard, is trying to connect with myself deeply, who I am and what I want to do, rather than just the accolades it might get me. So really, I think to do your best and to be great, it has to come from a very specific place, not from someone else. And that willingness to try hard in all situations goes hand in hand with this. Sometimes people try hard. When I say people, I mean me. I try hard because of a certain grade, because of what I think it might get me or whatever the case may be. I mean, I don't want this to be too cliche. I'm not perfect, but we all know that sometimes you just want to do something because it looks cool, or you think people think it looks cool. But the corollary to that that's really dangerous is that when something isn't cool or doesn't get you accolades, you often will half-ass it. And sorry, again, when I say you, I mean me. So maybe I'm climbing on something that's supposedly easy for me, and that starts getting hard. And I'm tempted to just phone it in. And what I've both heard and seen from the best climbers is that they try hard always. Always. Even when they are quote unquote struggling on an easy V12 because they're a V17 climber, they still give it their all and they're not embarrassed by that. And it's something that I have to remind myself again and again is regardless of who's looking, regardless if it's just an internal feeling that, hey, this should be easy, really taking each try or taking each attempt and each session as just the opportunity to give it my all. Even if you think this climb is beneath you, use this as an opportunity to do your best. And I mean, I don't know if that's the exact path from good to great, but boy, when I think about the other side of it, of never trying your hardest, that definitely doesn't sound like the right way. So those are the things that really jumped out at me. And, the also sub theme there is that it seems like each athlete's path to greatness is unique. And so when we listen to these athletes tell us what they think it takes to go from good to great, I think it's important to recognize that we can't just mimic them. We can't hear what they say and apply the formula to ourselves and suddenly become great. I think that there are more touch points that we should seek out and make sure that we are also following. But just know that everyone's path to greatness seems to be unique. And, so it's got to be your own journey. If I could sell you a pill or give you the beta to suddenly be one of the best in the world, I would be doing that right now. But it's not quite like that. So enjoy your journey. Make sure you're on the journey. And when you hear all of the best telling you about their journey, learn from it, take it with a grain of salt, but recognize that it's just some help. It's just something you can learn from, but that you have to still figure out on your own. And so let's do that in 2025. Let's take one step closer to our own personal greatness. Okay, one housekeeping thing before I let you go is that I recorded a special podcast that is going to be released at the same time as a video premiere. But that video, which I did not make, is unlikely to come out on Monday morning, which is when I normally drop an episode. So if a Monday rolls around and you don't see a Testpiece podcast episode waiting for you, please be patient and know that it will be coming later that week, and I promise it will be worth the wait for that special episode. Okay, now let's hear straight from the climbers themselves on what they think it takes to go from good to great. Starting with one of the greatest to ever do it, Jimmy Webb.
One thing that I think really sets the best climbers apart is like their mental game. They believe like deep down that they can do something. Like there's no doubt in their mind, and they are willing to put in that effort, and they're willing to like sit there day in and day out to try to do something hard. And that right there, like having the ability to flip the switch and just say in their own head and to believe it thoroughly that they're going to climb the boulder, maybe not that day, but they know that they can do it. And to be able to then like execute that and to like try every day and to really have that belief when they pull on the wall with no doubt in their mind that they can do it. I mean, that right there is I think one of the biggest things that set good climbers and great climbers apart.
Jeez, I just love that clip from Jimmy. That was on episode number 91. And I actually remember when he said that on the podcast, and I just knew it was going to be a banger and that I was going to hold that one close to my heart. And if you listen to that episode, which I recommend you do, is one of our most popular ever, Jimmy doesn't sugarcoat it. And I think that's a really important thing to think about when you go from good to great. Is it's not going to be easy. It's a brutal side of our sport that you have to execute when you need to. And I think Jimmy just said it there perfectly. This next one is by Ross Fulkerson on episode number 124. We recorded this live in Mallorca on a trip together, and I just love this one.
Having a goal that is intrinsically motivated is huge. Like doing the things you want to do for yourself is the best way to get into those flow states and just be happy in life in general. And then the second thing is surrounding yourself with people that are gonna motivate you and inspire you to actually do those things. And this is something I'm obviously working on now, but putting yourself in an environment that is conducive to greatness it's hard to do. And it takes some sacrifice, but it also takes way less sacrifice if you're around a bunch of people who are also enjoying it and pushing themselves and making you laugh and kind of helping keep you accountable.
Yeah, that's so cool from Ross. And just this idea about intrinsic motivation, as I brought up before, but then Ross unpacks it a little bit, and he basically shows that it's a key ingredient to flow states, which, as we all know, is when we send our hardest, is that perfect moment where everything just comes together. And for me, that is just a really meaningful connection. It's not just that intrinsic motivation is cool and sounds great, but that it's potentially one of the deepest requirements for having one of those special flow state moments where we really achieve our best. Oh yeah, and he brings up the importance of your crew. What do they say? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And just Ross's emphasis on that environment and those people you surround yourself to really help you tap into being the best you can be is awesome. And I was grateful to be part of his crew on that trip. Okay, this next one is from episode 119 with Melina Costanza. And I gotta tell you, it is one of my favorite episodes of the year. She was great. She even came on again after this episode because she won nationals in both lead and bouldering for the second time in a row. And so let's hear from Melina what she thinks it takes to go from good to great.
I think effort, I think resilience, being able to do that time and time again, being able to put yourself out there and be vulnerable time and time again. That, and a little bit what we were talking before, scrappiness. I think that the best people know that the first time you do anything, it's not going to look beautiful. It's not going to look perfect. Kind of abandoning the need for perfection and being willing to do whatever it takes in a given moment. You can always go back. You can always do it again. You can always do it better. You can always do it cleaner. I think it's showing up. I think it's putting everything you have out there and knowing that it doesn't have to look perfect, but that is a necessary step on the path to greatness.
Yeah, this one really got me. That idea of resilience over the long haul, just really struck me as someone who has gone through injuries, gone through the ups and downs, as we all have, gone through busy times, and just continuing to show up and do your best and trusting that will all work out really got me. And it also gets me because Melina, she's not just paying lip service to that. She had won nationals and was doing very well, and then sustained a serious injury and really had some struggles and had to make climbing take a backseat for a long time. And then she came back and won again and again and again and again. And so, it's not just empty words. And that idea of scrappiness is something that I really think is super important in all of our climbing. And it's hard to allow it. You often just want to look good. You want to not just climb well, but you want to look good trying it. And sometimes that keeps us from doing our very best. And I just love Melina's idea of being vulnerable, being willing to put it all out there and just letting the chips fall where they may and not worrying so much about if your send was beautiful or not. So thanks for that one, Melina. Okay, next one up is Matty Hong on episode 87. I love this episode. Really, the highlight for me on this episode was Matty talking about deep water soloing and sending big fish, which is a 14D or 9A deep water solo with the crux at around 20 meters, which is just insane. And you all know my love of deep water soloing. So let's hear what Matty had to say about going from good to great.
One of the biggest things that's helped me in my climbing is really trying climbs that are slightly above my level. It's really pushing yourself in areas that you're not comfortable with. For instance, if you hate sport climbing, you should really try to go sport climbing. If you hate bouldering, which is something that I didn't really like growing up, I was only a sport climber, but as soon as I started bouldering, my sport climbing progressed rapidly. And I think climbing, you can learn so much from it, and from all the different disciplines. You have different things that you can learn from each one, and the more climbing you do, the better you will be at it. And it's really just about practice and getting out there and pushing yourself. And I think you're not going to become a better climber if you say take. You're going to be a better climber when you take those big falls and when you're climbing to your limit and taking falls.
How many of you heard him say, don't say take, and just felt seen and didn't like it? It is such a common thing to stay inside your comfort zone, to get scared and then to give up. And on top of that, just that idea of always stretching yourself a little bit further. If you think you can do a 12B, well, maybe you should get on a 12C or maybe you should get on a 12D, or maybe you should finally start trying those 513s. And just always looking into those areas where you don't want to go is often the place you need to go the most. Okay, this last one is a bit of a bonus. To give you guys a little behind the scenes, the way this episode happened is that my team put together a list of clips that they found that they really liked about Good to Great. And those are the ones that I just read, and they're going to show up on my Instagram. And I kind of made the episode around those. But I couldn't resist adding one more from one of my favorite episodes. It was number 79. It was called West Coast Pimps, named after a classic, iconic video. And this little bit is from one of the guys who was on there, Joel Ruscher. And it's always resonated with me, so I hope you enjoy it.
Get uncomfortable, or maybe get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and fucking find some try hard. Like, it's in there, and it tends to be in those uncomfortable places. And the willingness to go into those uncomfortable places is where you'll be a completely different person when you exit.
I love that one. Thank you, Joel. That one dovetailed perfectly with Matty's. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. This one dropped in the start of 2024. And you know what? It was a hell of a way to start 2024. It's a hell of a way to start 2025. I always think that it's one of the foundations to, well, anything in life. You want to get philosophical, but definitely in climbing is try hard, get uncomfortable, and you will be a better person when you come out of that. Well, this was a fun little change of pace for this episode. And I hope you can take some of these lessons like I do and make a little note and write down what you think it takes to go from good to great, and then act on it. Act on it. That's one of the things that we see in all these athletes is they show up and they show up again and again, always in search of mastery. And I love that. I'm inspired by it. I look up to it, and I'm grateful that I get to talk to these amazing athletes week in and week out, because having their voice in my ear every time I pull on is helpful. And so I hope it's helpful for you too. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. See you next week.